Hey everybody, it's another flute lesson, which is awesome. I love doing these flute lessons, so I hope you guys are out there getting excited for this because it's kind of fun. It's fun to get to be able to play a little bit better. It's fun to be able to learn a couple of new skills, and hopefully get you guys appreciating the flute a little bit more. And actually just sounding better. That's really what we're hoping for, is to get you to sound, you know, I guess just as best as you possibly can. The biggest thing about instruments or any type of skill, if you want to build your skills, is you got to keep practicing, practice. But another big thing is also trying to find the right mentors, people who can help guide you through the process or help showcase a couple tips or tricks to help you get to from point A to point B. Mentorship is something that's been happening forever in the world of trades and skills and everything like that, right? You have your master and your apprentice and that type of stuff that goes on. So same thing with music, same thing with lessons, same thing with the Native American flute, which is what I have right here, and us getting to be able to play a little bit better. So, you know, we've talked about a lot of different things over the last couple of weeks, and it's time to kind of recap a little bit about what went on a couple weeks ago. So a couple weeks ago, we started talking about, a number of weeks back, we started talking about the idea of metronomes. And a couple weeks ago, sorry, I didn't mean to just point my head down, but a couple weeks ago, we got a little bit more in depth with our metronomes and actually learning about beats. I have my metronome here, my good old boss, but I'm not going to talk about him anymore. I'm just going to turn him on and put the click to around 60 and have you start clicking over there, because the idea of the metronome and the clicks and everything is to keep us in a steady pattern. Now, all that stuff doesn't really matter until we have context. And the context is what we talked about 2 weeks ago, especially in the idea of notes and what note values mean. So we're starting with our clicks are going, but now we're going to put that context back into the idea again. And I'm going to bring up a couple little images, a couple of graphics to help us remember what that context is. Remember, everything starts off with the whole note, the granddaddy of all notes. It is the big honking whole note. Now, the whole note is the largest note that we have. It doesn't mean it's the longest iteration we have. We can make things a lot more longer, but the whole note itself is something that is the largest iteration of what we have. So with that being said, it's good to know that the whole note can, it can be split in half, right? Anything that's one can be split into two, and that's the big trick here, especially with note types, is that we can always split things into two. So we start with the whole note, and after we get to the whole note, we can split it into two parts, and those two parts are known as half notes. In context, the half note is half as long as the whole note. So if the whole note was 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, the half note itself would only be 2 beats. 1, 2, 1, 2. That would be their length of the half notes, right? Because we're splitting things into half is really what it comes down to. 1 whole, 2 halves. Now, half notes can be split. And we split those again. We split them into quarter notes. Transition that, so you see what the quarter note looks like. And again, we're just splitting in half. So if the whole note was 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the half note was 2, 1, 2, the quarter note's only going to be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And that's kind of the context that we're putting this rhythm into, is that these note types can always be split into two parts. And from those two parts, we get smaller and smaller notes, right? Excuse me. So the big thing for us then is just to keep getting familiar with the note types. After quarter notes come eighth notes, which look a little bit like the quarter note, except it's got a little staff on it. After eighth notes come 16th notes, which looks like the eighth note, except it's got 2 flags on it instead of 1 flag. And we just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And again, it's kind of good to note that with all of these different with all these different types of notes, that we can now understand how rhythm can work for us as we're playing, as we're performing. So if I want to play something and I have my context, click, click. I can now understand where those notes come from, the rhythm, and the pulses that go along with it. So that's the exciting thing about understanding our note types. Now, excuse me. After we learn our note types, last week we spent a majority of the time not just talking about note types, but also talking about the idea of how do we turn those note types into patterns that we can work on to help build up our skills, right? And excuse me, I'm gonna drink some water because I'm coughing like crazy right now. So, how do we create patterns that allow us to use these note types over and over again? Well, it's simple. First off, we create some sort of beat, like use a metronome, whether you purchase a metronome or you use one on your smartphone or someplace like that. It's the idea of getting a metronome, and we start the beat, and then we just play up and down our notes on the flute to the beat. And using these note types as techniques and as ideas to allow us to create something more, right? So let's just start with quarter notes, and we're going to go up. So we're going to go first position, second position, third position, fourth position, third, second, first. Real simple. And actually what we'll do is we'll double the fourth position. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Very simple. 1, 2, ready, play. And that allows us to, one, learn how the beat works and how we're going to play, but also get our fingers moving so that they are working with the beat. And we can create all sorts of different types of note patterns on that, right? We don't have to do ascending or descending like we did here, ascending and descending. We can do skips, right? So we can go to first position, third position, second position, first position, third position, second position, fourth position, right? We can do that type of skip. And we can work on all sorts of different variations within those skips and within those jumps and within those patterns. And that's the big thing about understanding the note types as well as the beat, is putting all this into some sort of context, and some sort of understanding of how we can play. And the best part about that is as we start playing with beats, as we start internalizing that, pulse, boom, 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 we can start to, in our performances, actually create a much stronger order. We can create a much stronger understanding and sound quality and a tighter feeling so that people who are listening can really attach themselves to what we're doing. And that's the cool thing, because if you're just playing all over the place, right? Right, it's hard to follow along with that, and as an audience member, it's really not. It doesn't sound as good as it could, and so when we listen to that type of stuff, it kind of makes us cringe. So as performers, when we're thinking about what we want to play so that the audience can follow along, we do want to have that kind of context, that beat, that rhythm, so things can make a little bit more sense, right? All of a sudden, now the music starts to make more sense. It starts sounding a little bit more pleasing. And that's all because now we're understanding the note context, the rhythms, and how the beat all works. And that's what we focused our last 3 lessons on, is trying to understand that kind of feeling so that as we move forward, as we create more notes, as we start getting more proficient in what we're playing, we're actually making things sound better for people at large. Okay, so let's start talking about adding to what we originally know. So we start talking off, or we started the whole thing off with the lower hand and how we now know the notes of the lower hand. Whatever the name of the instrument is the first one, right? This is first position, so whatever name. This is an E flute, so the first position is going to be E, and then we go up to, right? So we jump for our second position, we go over the next letter and get to the next letter afterwards. So instead of an E going to an F, we jump over F and we get to G. So this is a G of some sort. It's actually a G natural, and that's perfect. So we go to E to G. Our third position is the next letter up, A. The next, or in our open position, our fourth position is the next letter up. So this is going to be B. And so on my E flute, it goes E, G, A, B. Awesome, wonderful, nothing super complicated. The upper hand follows another type of pattern that we kind of look at. Okay, now with the upper hand, it's good to know that this finger here, this your what we would consider like the first finger, right? So our first finger here and our first finger here, or the fourth finger, however you want to count it. It's either what you would count our first high hand or fourth finger. This finger here is going to be static. It's going to stay there. We call this an anchor finger. So where our fourth finger is going to be an anchor finger, which means we just don't move it. So as I'm going up, right, first position, second position, third position, fourth position, fifth position is actually going to be not this finger, but our fifth finger or our second finger on the high hand. That's going to be fifth position. Then we have sixth position, and that's kind of rounds out our notes on the upper hand. Is we have fifth and sixth. So what that gives us when we play them all together is a nice minor pentatonic scale. And that's not including these two fingers up here inside of our what we would consider our upper hand, right? So what we would call fourth finger, fifth finger, and sixth finger, or if you want to use the upper hand, it is first, second, and third on the upper hand. However you want to look at it. I like the positions more, or the numbers of the 5 and the 6 more so than the upper hand. It just makes it easier to say. And then when we look at our actual positions, right, we have first position, second position, third position, fourth position, fifth position, and sixth position. So now we have all of our fingers being active inside of that, which is good because that gives us our minor pentatonic scale. Now let's talk about the pentatonic scale real quick. Pentatonic, penta, like pentagon or pentagram or penta, whatever else you want to stick penta in front of, that is 5. Penta means 5. So we have a pentatonic, tonic meaning tone, scale. So we have a 5-tone scale. We've talked about this before. It's nothing new. Diatonic means 7. Dia is 7. So diatonic means 7 tones. That is what we normally assess with our regular scales, is these 7-tone sequences. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, C, D, E, G, B, F. Well, I said that all wrong. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. I don't know where I was going with the other stuff, but so that's 7 tones. But here we have a 5-tone scale. So with our 5-tone scale, especially in the E, so I'm going to use the E pattern, right? We have E, then we jump over our next letter, so no F or F sharp or F flat or whatever it's going to be. Then we go to G, A, B. Now, because we keep this finger here, we jump over the next letter, right? So it's not going to be a C, because we ended with B. We're going to go to the next letter. This is going to be D, and then we're going to get back to our E. Okay, so sixth position, or all of them with our anchor finger there, is the same thing, is the exact same note as everything covered up. E, G, A, B, jump over the next letter. So this would be C. We're going to jump over it, and we're going to get to D, then back to E. Pretty simple. Okay. So again, E, G, A, B, D, E. That is the pentatonic scale. And if you count the letters that we're saying, we're actually only saying 5 letters. G, 1, right? E, 1, G, 2, A, 3, B, 4, D, 5, E. We already said E, so we're back to square one again. That's our 5 tones inside of the pentatonic scale. So it sounds again like this. So G, then we go, E, then we go to G, A, B, D, E. And that pattern works again for every single flute. Just like our lower hand pattern works for every single flute, our upper hand pattern works for every single flute as well. So if you start off with an A flute, you go A, jump over the next letter to get to the next one. So jump over the letter and then get the next letter. So C, then D, E. Now we jump over the next letter, F, G, go to G, and then to A. So we are now, our scale would be A, C, D, E, skip over F, G, A. That would be the pentatonic scale for the A flute. If you have a G flute, right, it goes G, skip over letter, B flat. Again, don't worry about the accidentals because I'll fill you in with the accidentals for right now. B flat, C, D, skip over E, get to F, and back to G. It's crazy how this all works. It's the same type of pattern all over the place. And that's the thing, is the great thing about these instruments is that they follow a very similar pattern, and it's very easy to follow along where you want to go and what you want to do. Now that we're including these upper hand notes, these notes up here, the nice thing is we can start to create our patterns again using the full form of the flute. Give me 1 second. I apologize for that. But using the full form of the flute, we can now create patterns that go entirely up the scale. So let me get my pulse going again, right? And now I'm going to go ascending and descending using the entirety of my fingers in my flute scale, okay? Again, remember, the 4th finger is an anchor finger. It always stays there. We don't ever move it. It is always there. So 1, 2, ready, go. And we can build the patterns again using that type of idea. We're using that rhythmic context. We're keeping the pulse going. We're keeping the idea of the beat happening, but we're now incorporating all the notes inside of our flute to create a good rhythm and a good understanding for us to be able to practice. And again, trying to just get better and more proficient at us practicing the flute. So here, again, we just wanted to go up and down, and we're using quarter notes here. We're using just the idea of 1 note per beat being a quarter note, so that we don't have to do anything super crazy or anything really out of the ordinary. However, using longer notes will allow us to create a stronger breath control that we can start using inside of our performances. Remember, we talked about how breath is so important, that it's important to actually use your diaphragm when you breathe so you get the best air possible, so you can go for long periods of time. That is really, really important. And we start using exercises like this, it's going to showcase how much you need to practice your breathing and get your breath support going. Now, we didn't start practicing breathing, or we didn't do a little breathing exercise when we started this lesson, which we should have. That's something we should have done. But because we didn't do that, it's important for us to actually show what the problem of not warming up properly your breath is. And so I'm going to show that for you right now. We're going to play half notes. So 2 beats for every note. And we're going to go up and down. And I'm not going to make it. I just don't have that much lung capacity to do it. But I'm going to show you what happens when you don't practice your breathing or warm up properly. Okay? 2, ready, go. You see, I had to take a breath in there because I couldn't make the entire thing. Also, what you may notice is as I was starting to lose air, the tones itself started shaking. It started quivering a little bit, and that's because there's not enough support to make the whistle work as properly as it should. When you get that kind of quiver like this, sorry, that's kind of you running out of air. When you get that sound shaking, what you need to do is you need to either one, build up your breath support, or two, get better air, like somehow get a good breath going in as you're practicing it, as you're playing it through. And those sounds, I mean, that comes with practice. You just have to practice it over and over again. There are songs out there that super easy, right? You know, quarter notes, and that's all it is, and makes it easier for you to play up and down and goes by pretty fast. But people love the long tones. They love that slow sound, that peaceful sound, that relaxing sound. So getting your breath support so you can play the long tones is incredibly important. And that's what you want to kind of focus in on as you're playing the flute, is putting your long tones in together with fast stuff. Fast stuff's cool, but it's that long tones that people really, really like. Especially, I mean, think of it this way: long tones give us a sense of something to hold on to. It gives us that ability to say, that's the note. That's what I really like to hear. As long as all the other fast stuff is really cool, but that long tone, that gives me something to just kind of clench onto and be like, I really like that, right? So I have play fast stuff. It's a long tone where you can actually have a little bit of personality come through, because you can hear like the vibrato of the person, which we haven't talked about, but we'll talk about at some point. You can hear how they hold out their long tones. Is it a solid long tone, or is it a long tone that kind of has shakes? It has a little bit of quiver to it and doesn't really isn't say consistent. It's really important to note, like, where do these long tones come from and how does each of the players perform and play it. Especially when you listen to artists, it's amazing how you can, with this flute, you can very easily like catch a pure long tone sound, even though it may not necessarily have the right attack or have a really strong attack or have a really great release. The long tone there kind of gives you ability to fake or necessarily not have as strong of an attack or release. The attack being how the note starts, and the release being how the note ends. So having a strong attack would be something like this. Right, there's a stronger attack. You can hear the note start. Here's a slightly softer attack. So it's not quite as pronounced, but it's still there. Stronger attack. And we'll talk about this. Actually, we should probably talk this in our next lesson. But for right now, we're just kind of creating the idea that we have upper notes that we can play with and exercises that we can create. So let's kind of just like recap a little bit about what we went through today. Just a quick little recap so that you kind of understand where we are without giving you so much that you have to kind of go, whoa, man, my head, it's crazy. Okay, so recap. Right, beats. We're always going to talk about beats. We're always going to talk about rhythm. It's important. It's so important as players. So we started off with the note types. We started off with the exercises. And now we're just kind of keeping the rhythm in the background as we're creating more exercises. Secondly, we talked about the upper hand. Now, depending upon if you're right-handed or left-handed, usually what you do is you put your strong hand on the bottom here and your weak hand on the top. There, okay. So I'm right-handed, so my strong hand's on the bottom, but you could, if you wanted to, flip it around. It's not that huge of a deal to do that. It's just you tend to put your strong hand on the bottom. That's the idea. Now, for upper hand, we have our anchor finger, and our anchor finger is always going to stay there. It's just going to stay constant. We just don't move it, right? So our fourth finger, oh, excuse me. I don't know where that came from. Our fourth finger is our anchor finger, and we just keep it there. And so we have now this finger, our second finger, and our third finger of our upper hand coming off. If we look at it in terms of like positions, we have first position where all the holes are covered, second, third, fourth where it's open on the lower hand, fifth position, and sixth position. That's the kind of idea of like positionings. And that gets us a full scale. Now, the scale that we talked about is the pentatonic scale, and that's a 5-note scale. And the notes of the flutes are very easy. It's a very simple pattern, right? It is the lower hand, or all fingers covering up give us the name of the flute. So the lowest tone is the name of the flute. This is an E, so here's an E. We're now going to skip over the next letter of the alphabet and get to the G. That's our second position. Then we go to A and B, and now we're going to skip over the next letter of the alphabet and get to D, and all of a sudden we're back to E. Those are the 5 notes that we play, right? On this flute, again, it is E, G, A, B, D, E. On an A flute, it's A, C, D, E, G, A. On a G flute, it's G, B flat, C, D, F, G. Remember, we're skipping those other notes. So there's 2 sets of notes that we're skipping. And that's really kind of important, because if we played those notes, we would have a diatonic scale, unlike the pentatonic scale that we get by having these anchor figure and the 5 notes that we play. So pentatonic versus diatonic, that's something important to note. Now, again, once we know our notes, we can put them into a rhythmic context and we can learn how to play with them. So up, ascending, descending, very simple patterns. And if we want to, we could change that up. We were doing like, the every other pattern on our lower hand. So we would start with, first position, go to third position, second position, fourth position. You can do that same type of rhythm and just kind of keep these other notes inside of the play. Just have to remember that you're alternating going up. So you would do, first to third to second to fourth to third to fifth to fourth to 6. That gets kind of tricky up there, but that's kind of how that pattern would work, right? You're just doing every other one. And that's a way that you can build up your exercises and your finger skills, is by doing every other. You can do every 3, every 4. You can do all sorts of jumps all over the place. Start off on the high and jump down. Start off the low and jump up. Build up your finger memory, your muscle memory. Build up your consistency of sound. Right. Sometimes when you go from one note to another note, it doesn't quite sound as solid because you're just kind of skipping and get a little squeak inside there. So the idea of exercises like this is to help you build up your consistency of sound and make everything work out for you. The best thing about this now is, as you start going and playing around with your own different types of music and your own different types of performances, you can add all these different techniques and tricks into your own stuff and make it sound a little bit more, you, and be a little bit more expressive and a little bit more ideas going inside of it. So that's really what we're talking about, the upper hand, and how that kind of introduces a whole new set of ideas and thoughts that we can play with in terms of our flute. So go out and keep practicing, keep making some beautiful music, and I will hopefully see you next time. Thanks a lot, and I will we will again see each other in a couple weeks. I think that's a good idea. Thanks.